tonight. Diana McKeown is going to cover electric vehicle basics, Minnesota's charging infrastructure, and more. Diana is the co-director of Minnesota's Clean Energy Resource Teams and the Metro CERT director at the Great Plains Institute. Diana is also a chapter member and was one of the first 1,000 climate messengers trained by Al Gore in January of 2007. It's kind of cool. Diana, it's all yours. Okay.
Thank you. Well, it's really exciting to be here with you all. It's fun, to be able to do this. I don't know what the trainings have been over the past decade or more, but we got to go to Nashville and spend time, and Al Gore was in front of the room with us, training us every day. It was pretty amazing. So grateful to be here and talk about this. I will say that we're gonna get to it and run through this, and I'll answer the questions, and then as soon as you don't need me anymore, I'm gonna go turn on the Lynx game because I've got my Lynx gear on. It's our winningest team in Minnesota. So I will share my screen and we'll just launch into this. Let's go. This is just a little overview of what I'll cover. We talked about the basics a little bit more in Greater Minnesota. We're focused on that, some of the incentives and resources. So first, CERTs. So the Clean Energy Resource Teams is a statewide partnership. Our mission is to, our shared mission is to connect individuals and communities with all the things that they need to be able to identify, plan, and implement a local clean energy-based, community-based clean energy project. So we are a partnership, as I said. That's why it was like CERTs and Great Plains and like it's confusing. So these are the 4 partners. I'm at Great Plains. I'm an employee of the Great Plains Institute. And one of the roles that the Great Plains Institute plays is we coordinate the metro region, and I'll show you the regions. But I play a dual role right now, co-directing the statewide partnership, and I direct the metro region. And then you see the other partners that we have. It's really focused on bringing as many resources as we can to community. We have part of this series was done related to community energy ambassadors. So we've got a community energy ambassador program where we're trying to get more people information, knowledge, and resources to be able to communicate about all those rebates and all those things that we've been talking about to a lot of communities, especially underserved communities. So here we go, EV Basics 101. Probably most of you know this. When we're talking about electric vehicles, we are talking about those 2 in that box. We are not talking about the original Prius that came out that was great. It's still great. We're talking about only the kind of electric vehicles that can be recharged, so that you plug them in. And I don't read slides, so I won't read all the things, but these are the basics of the different kinds of vehicles: the full battery electric, the plug-in hybrid that has a gas backup, and then the hybrid electric vehicle. There are many, many, many different models of electric vehicles. I bought my first electric vehicle in 2013, and the choices were slim. The charging was slim. I didn't have a fast port charger. So it's really important to know like the variety of vehicles that are out there. And there's, incredible incentives that we'll talk about later that make them much more affordable. This is a little bit about the adoption of electric vehicles in Minnesota. As of July, you can see that we had, over 40,000 battery electric vehicles and 17,000 public or plug-in hybrids. Adoption is growing and growing. We have a state goal, and we've got a lot of work to get there. So I'm going to switch and talk about charging a bit. So there's 3 different types of charging: level 1, level 2, and some people call it level 3, but it's really usually referred to as direct current fast charging or DC fast charging or just DC. So level 1, it's a simple outlet, and that works. I have some friends that don't drive much or have a first generation Nissan Leaf or something like that, and the regular socket works just fine, and we refer to it usually as a trickle charge. Level 2 is really the most popular. It's about double the speed or so of the level 1. And I think a lot of folks would get one of those for their garage. I actually just used the cord that my card came with and didn't buy a special charger. And then there's the DC fast chargers. And you can see there's 3 different kinds of plugs. There's the Tesla one, um, and that is the NACS, and that has been opening up finally. We've been hearing about it for several years. They're finally opening up some of those Tesla chargers for other chargers to be able to use. The Chatamo, which is mostly used by Asian vehicles, so the Nissan Leaf, that like what I have, uses that, and then the CCS, which is really common in the European Union and is the standard that the US is moving towards. Uh, I mean, there's charging infrastructure all over the place. I mean, well, except for Montana and the Dakotas. Um, but so, they're growing and growing because there was a lot of funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law and in the Inflation Reduction Act for charging stations. We're seeing businesses and municipal utilities and all kinds of folks putting them in. So it's just growing day by day. In Minnesota, we are also really growing. I mean, obviously, there's still pockets that are slim, but certainly if you live in the Twin Cities metro area, there is plenty of public charging in and around the metro. The thing I think that's super important for folks that do not have electric vehicles, people ask me, well, where do you charge it? Like at the mall? I said, I charge it at home. Like I hardly ever charge it out in the public. And most vehicles have at least about 100-mile range for full battery electric. And so it's, most people drive somewhere in the 30 to 35-mile range per day. So it really works for most folks. So I charge mine at home overnight. The charging again is growing in Minnesota. We've talked about that. Huge growth in Q2 of 2024. I think again, there's some Volkswagen money, settlement money. There's a number of different things that are prompting that. The Department of Commerce, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and the Public Utilities Commission have, used this Minnesota EV dashboard. They, Alice Public Policy put that together. You can see the website or the link there. And it's really deep information. And you can really nerd out if you go dig around in here about the market, about vehicles and charging. And there's just really, and you can look at the map and see where they are. It's really fascinating if you want to dig in. We're going to talk just for a few minutes about the benefits because if you're, I know I'm mostly talking to the choir, but you might still not be aware of some of the benefits. So transportation emissions, mobile air pollution sources are a predominant pollutant, especially in the metro area. So they're the largest contributor to greenhouse gases in addition to contributing to asthma and things in a metro area. They don't pollute as much. And then, people like me who are, fortunate enough to also have solar, I can, really, I can use my solar to charge my car so that my car is basically a renewable energy car. Lower fuel and maintenance. It's unbelievable how the difference in the maintenance schedule that you get when you buy a car, when you look at an EV versus a gas fueled vehicle. I basically rotate my tires and put in windshield wiper washer fluid. I mean, that's it. Every once in a while, I put in some blinker fluid. No, I'm just kidding, you guys. And so the other thing that I think a lot of the things, and a lot of the sources out there don't talk about is time. For me, that maintenance, not having that maintenance is time for me going to get my oil changed, getting a belt replaced, whatever that might be. I have never in the 5, 8, 9-ish years that I've owned an electric vehicle had a mechanical problem that I had to take my car to the shop for. Health benefits. I talked about, asthma is a big issue. And so those mobile sources at the ground level, like vehicles, really add to that. There's a ton of health benefits when we talk about the particulate matter and all kinds of things. Again, my apologies. I don't like to read slides to people. Um, so lower cost, the, fuel savings, obviously that's the biggest piece, the maintenance as well. And there's, some cool like cost calculators and things that you can utilize that will help you figure out what's the right one for you. And I talked about, I described the maintenance schedule, and here's an example with a Chevy Bolt and the Chevy Cruze, which are fairly similar vehicles. And you can see the big difference in what is needed. It's mostly rotating tires. A lot of people talk also about energy independence. That's an important piece. Although, we import much less oil than we have in the past, it's still a factor. So really need to, one other opportunity for folks to have, and we don't have any in Minnesota, so we're importing that. Talk a little bit about batteries, and I'll just warn you, I'm not a battery expert. But some of the resources and information that we have and that Drive Electric has, it's just like any other technology, the battery costs are declining, they're getting smaller, they're getting lighter, which means that the car can go farther because doesn't have as much weight to carry. So, we're just seeing, the emissions that are associated declining. We know that there's lots of concerns about ethical concerns about the extraction of critical minerals, and the EV industry is working very hard on that. And there's actually, I think, some funds aimed at that through some of the congressional bills that we've seen. Performance, again, changing. I mean, anytime you have a new technology, changes over time, just increase the efficiency, the size, the operation, the life, etc. And so that is happening also with batteries. Talk a little bit about electric vehicles in Greater Minnesota. There might be some vehicles that are more suited for Greater Minnesota, going down that gravel road or dirt road, or, whatever you need to do. And having a long range because the drives are longer in Greater Minnesota. And I just always try to remind people, they're like, oh, an electric vehicle is not for me. Well, a plug-in hybrid has a gasoline back. It's just like a gasoline car. Like, it doesn't have limitations. So, I mean, anybody can have a plug-in hybrid car. It's better. And with a hybrid vehicle, the battery is much smaller. So you don't have to have a level 2 charger to charge it. You can use an outlet because you're talking generally between, I don't know, 25 and 80 or so miles on that plug-in hybrid. So these are just considerations that we encourage. We try really hard to not paint this rosy picture and not talk about the challenges in Greater Minnesota, because I have a colleague that has a electric vehicle, and sometimes she gets stuck and has problems when it's really cold. Sometimes the chargers don't work as well. They don't put on electricity as fast. So there are definitely challenges, and we don't try to minimize them. And we know things are growing and changing, and we're getting more chargers, and their uptime is higher, etc. So really, but we really want people to think about, like, it takes more planning, right? It just takes a little bit more planning and thought. So the charging infrastructure in Greater Minnesota also is growing. I showed you the map, but we actually participated in a grant that the Minnesota Department of Transportation put in for some chargers for communities. And they did My apologies. And they did get $8 million. We're expecting that we'll have a RFP out, I don't know, and probably in early 2025, so that folks can apply, community can apply for that funding. And like I said, we, in that last slide, it said we asked a bunch of communities for support letters. And I mean, it's just really exciting for me to see all the different communities across the state that signed letters of support because they're interested and they want to have a charger in their community. And then also utilities are really expanding their charging as well. So here's a little picture of some of the chargers that Otter Tail Power is putting in. You can see I, have named and I've starred the ones that are DC fast chargers because that's, like I said, especially in Greater Minnesota, it's better to have those as well. And then Minnesota Power also has a little map of the ones that they're installing, and most of them I think are installed, but they're still working on a few. So lots of really, lots of growth, both, from public monies, from utilities, from businesses, et cetera, and local governments too. Very exciting. This past February, we hosted the very first wintertime electric vehicle ride and drive in the nation in Ely, Minnesota, which seemed really kind of perfect. If you're going to do something in the winter to prove that it can happen in the winter, you do it in Ely. We planned it, a few months in advance, and we had no idea that on February 3rd, 2024, it was going to be 60 degrees in Ely, which is what it was. And I think that's just an example of the challenges that we're facing, globally with the weather that we're having and the need for more people to drive electric. So we'll talk a little bit about electric vehicle incentives. There are tax credits from the federal government. There are some requirements income-wise. Vehicle needs to meet some certain conditions. Policy is really created to drive the behavior that government is trying to do to further goals. And so, they want more manufacturing jobs in Minnesota or in North America. They, trying to address the battery issues in mining and other places, and and so and trying to maybe not give people who can afford an electric vehicle a discount. So. There's also used vehicles can be there are used vehicles requirements as well because there's rebates for both the new and the used. And here's just a couple of little things to keep in mind about the vehicles and what's required. And I was really surprised that you can use 2 new vehicle credits per year. I mean, I don't buy 2 new vehicles a year, but whoever does that, they can use it twice a year. There's a couple of Minnesota incentives as well. I just missed the MinPass one, which doesn't super matter for me, but there's utility incentives. So if you're thinking about buying an electric vehicle, check with your utility first before you buy a vehicle and before you buy a charger. They have different rebates and incentives, and sometimes the dealer will try to sell you a charger, and it turns out to not be the charger that your utility would give you a discount on or allow you to enter one of their programs. So that's one of the biggest pieces of information I give to, tips is make sure to check with your utility for their rebates and programs before you buy. And then the Minnesota electric vehicle rebate, which disappeared really quickly. First stop for, like I just said, the utility. See, I was foreshadowing. Here's the, really just encouraging people. And there's a great site, mncharging.com, where you can go in and you can find your utility and then go to their website and find the information. And then the Drive Electric Minnesota, which is facilitated by Great Plains Institute, where I work, put together a database of incentives. So you could actually just go in here and look at a bunch of the different incentives too. It's a Airtable, and it's a great little tool. And here's a picture of what it looks like. So there are a bunch of the utility ones. So you can see like up to 2,500, up to 2,000. That's a pretty good deal. All right, more electric vehicle resources. There's a couple of different sites you can go to try to figure out what the right kind of EV is for you. There's a couple of different ones, so you can poke around in there and see what works for you. There's a couple different sites for public charging. I think most drivers use PlugShare. AFDC is the government one. You can use both of those to plan trips. And a lot of the, especially newer EVs, have built-in navigation to help you get to EV chargers. There's a couple of tools on the costs if people are, curious about what that means and what that looks like for them. And, if you're in different utility, you might have different charging rates or different programs. So, but it can help you with that. We also have a ride and drive toolkit at Drive Electric Minnesota. And so if you wanted to do a host a ride and drive in your community, there's a toolkit you could use. And then this is actually for the ambassador program. But if you had feedback or anything, you're welcome to share that with us as well. Again, this program that I gave in September was intended for community energy ambassadors, but obviously all the information is pertinent to others as well. And I think that is it. I'll stop sharing. I hope I didn't go too fast. I can always go back and get things,
The questions are coming in.
All right, well, here we go. Jessica.
Oh, wow, that was so fast. I wasn't ready. Um, thank you so much for this great presentation. I wanted to echo a few things that you said. I think one of the things that's like really important to mention is why the I think two things. One is like why the operation and maintenance of these cars are so much easier, and that's just because there's like not the there's almost no moving parts except for the tires.
Right.
It's like so critical. And then the other thing that I wanted to echo was in terms of like energy efficiency, like it's not just at like the emissions that happen, but there's so much energy lost in the conversion of gas to movement that do you have that data? I mean, I don't know if it's like 60%, but it's massive. And when you do that with a battery, there's just about no energy loss, even in the charge.
Right.
The one thing that I wanted to add, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Was the V2X, that like the V2X technology that's happening. So that's vehicle to anything, like vehicle to grid, vehicle to home. The cars, our current cars can only like really take us from one place to another, but EVs can act as backup for our home. It can connect to the grid, and it's not just a charger. It's not just charging, but it can also be part of a virtual power plant and all these really cool things that can happen with the V2X. I'm sure you can speak much better about it than I can.
I think you covered it. I mean, I think there are not a lot of applications of that happening right now. That's why I don't talk a lot about it, but it is certainly something coming in for those early adopters. It's definitely something that, folks are interested in. Thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate you sharing your enthusiasm. Chuck.
Hi, just a couple points of maybe clarification.
Mhm.
Did I hear you correctly say that the the US is moving toward the CCS plug?
Yeah.
My impression is it's the opposite. We're moving toward the Tesla plug, the NACS.
Well, my apologies. As opposed to the CHAdeMO. And so
CHAdeMO is ancient history already.
well, not for those of us that have Nissan Leafs.
I know, but it's a
Right.
anyway.
So I think until the, before the the NACS just really started opening up. So, prior to that, it's the CCS it was the standard. And so now I think there is some movement, but I don't know how many of the stations have been opened up, but
It's my impression though that the NACS will become the standard. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of time.
and my apologies, I meant between those two. I wasn't talking about Tesla.
Okay.
And part of me, I haven't, I don't think about that one, but yes, you're
Number
right.
two,
you're correct.
could you clarify the difference between a rebate and a tax credit? When I bought my EV, there was a tax credit of $7,500, and being a senior citizen, I don't pay a lot of taxes. I had to scramble to figure out a way to use that. And the tax credit is very different from a rebate.
It is true. So a tax credit, you have to have a tax appetite. It can be carried over if you don't have enough tax appetite in the first year. And so it is applied directly at the time when you file taxes. You'll get that money back. So I bought my vehicle in the May of 2019, and when I got my taxes back in March of 2020, I had an additional $7,500 as part of my tax return. The rebate it is, the attempt is to do it point of sale so that people don't have to wait for their tax credit. There are a lot of rules around like making sure that you're doing it with a registered dealership, and there's just a bunch of different steps. It's possible, but there are a number of different steps in there that you want to take. Let's see, I'm trying to find something here to share with you guys. Oh, that's not right. So yes, there's a big difference between those two mechanisms of getting your tax credits. And I'll just put in here the link to our IRA page on the CERT's website. And if you scroll down, there's a place that talks about the difference between a tax credit versus a rebate, what that is. We describe that so people can see that. And then when you scroll down, you can see we have kind of technology or audience and technologies. So you can go in and click on there and go, okay, these are the things that relate to me, for the EVs, like what are the things that relate to me, and then it'll take you to the IRS and all the things, so you can get that information.
Does someone else have a question? I'm not sure if someone's trying to raise their hand, they didn't know how.
Hey, I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
This is Bill Weimer. I joined a little bit late, so apologies for that. And also, in case this question hits on something that was talked about, I just came a few minutes late. But one thing I wanted to kind of bring up, and you mentioned, Diana, that you have a home solar system used to that. Therefore, your vehicle is truly renewable because you're obviously using electricity to move the vehicle, but you're also charging the battery with solar energy, as opposed to XL Energy if it's coming from one of their natural gas plants, which would generate the electricity from a petrol, an oil-based system. So I just want to mention that I don't have a home solar system. I have and I have a Chevy Volt, which is a plug-in hybrid. So because I don't have the solar home system, I elect from XL Energy something called the Renewable Select electricity, which just means that XL provides that electricity through solar and wind generated systems. It's not like my electrons coming into the house are coming directly from a solar
Right.
panel or a wind turbine, but what it means is XL goes out and buys more solar or wind energy on the market that it can tap into. So that's my way of doing what Diana does, which is I want to drive my Volt on 42 miles each day using electricity that was generated from solar and wind rather than, I wouldn't mind nuke. I'm kind of a pro nuke guy, but I really don't want to drive a
Mhm.
electric vehicle based on a natural gas plant generated electricity. So
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, my solar covered about 90% of my electricity before the electric vehicle. And I get the rest of whatever my solar system doesn't produce, whatever I'm buying, I buy the renewable energy. So all of my energy is from renewable energy.
yeah,
Thank you for bringing that. It's an important, concept for folks. There's a way to make this even better, right? And I will just say that our grid, especially if you're on Excel, is much greener than many, many, many others across the country. We have a and they're really making big strides. So it's not a coal car like people would like to call it, if
yeah,
you're plugging in. Because that's what I get that a lot. And it's like, well, our grid's pretty green, especially in Minnesota, we've got 32%, something like that. But in the Excel territory, it's even higher. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's higher.
yeah. That's a good point, and I think someone who's considering whether to buy an EV right now should know that it's pretty green right now, and it's getting a lot greener.
100%.
Our source. So
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
that's a good one.
Yeah, in addition to the Excel programs, there's lots of community solar as well. And
Mhm.
I get both some wind source from Excel, then I get
Yep.
cooperative energy futures for my electricity. So it's kind of cool.
Mm,
I
right.
love Cooperative Energy Futures. They're really good friends of mine. I was just sitting
Yeah.
with them at the solar conference.
Well, while we wait for the next question, let's give Diana a big hand here for taking the
Oh,
time
thank
to
you.
share with us. Thank you. Yeah.
Tammy.
Oh, I guess that was Tammy's hand.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was trying to clap and not be disruptive.
oh no, that's great. Thank you. I totally missed that.
Yeah.
I just saw a hand and assumed, yeah, I thought it was.
Diana, which kind of EV did you say you had?
Both of mine have been the Nissan Leaf. I had the first generation Nissan Leaf, 2013, and so it had an 80 or so mile range. It didn't have a fast port. There weren't any fast charging then, like it didn't exist. So it didn't, it didn't have that, and there was hardly any charging. Like the Roseville Public Library and a couple of Goodwills. I mean, it was really slim. And at the time I was married and had, we had a second car, and so it usually worked out pretty well. But there were, places I went that I'd have to, the Goodwill in Forest Lake got my business a lot because I went, and they were smart because I would plug in and I would go in and shop. And boy, things have really, really changed. So my second one, I have a Nissan. I'm a single person now. I like to say I got single, and I have it's just me, and I have some friends were saying you should get the plug-in hybrid, and I said no, it's really important to me to walk my walk. And there have been a couple times I've had to travel for work in, greater Minnesota, and I've borrowed my mom's car or rented a car. But for the most part, it's just not an issue. And personally, I went on a road trip, but my friend drove, like we can figure this out. It's not rocket surgery. Amanda. Amanda had her hand up, but then maybe she took it down. Okay, Anna.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Diana, I was muted.
Did you, yeah, go on ahead.
Sorry, Anna. Sorry. I was speaking and I was muted and didn't realize it. Diana,
Got
I
it.
wanted to for your presentation. It was really informative. My question relates to barriers to adoption of
Yeah.
EVs.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are really sold on the efficiency of an EV, the impact on the environment, the tax credits are great, the rebates are great, but we're still not seeing this like widespread adoption of EVs. And I wonder if it's, cost prohibitive, and if the state of Minnesota is thinking about initiatives to really address that piece, like trade-in programs where they can trade in their petrol vehicle for an EV. Because, if somebody has a perfectly functioning petrol vehicle, and the cost of an EV is just like an added, line
Mhm.
item to their budget. I don't know if we're going to get, as widespread adoption as we'd like and as we'd hope.
That's a great question. I will say several things. First, the prices keep coming down and down and down, and the rebates and tax credits make a huge difference. I think the thing that needs to happen is a shift in the way we think about vehicle ownership, because we only think about the upfront price. That's what we talk about. How much did my car cost? But when the benefit of an electric car comes in, the cost savings of the fuel over the lifetime, you really have to think about the cost of a car and the total cost of ownership. So that's the frame we're trying to, help people with. Yeah, you're going to pay less upfront, but you're going to buy gas, and that fluctuates, and we're, held hostage on, what that costs. Boy, I was sure glad when it was $5 a gallon that I was driving my electric vehicle. I was pretty happy about that. And so I think that's a shift. I would say, so I do think we're going to see more and more vehicles in the prices coming down. We're seeing more. It's just technology adoption curve. It's really the technology adoption curve. We need to get there faster, but that's hard. The one other challenge I will bring up is people who don't have a garage, don't have access to charging, live in multifamily, don't have those kinds of things. And I know that there's lots of a lot of folks working on how to make that situation better. How do you make sure that there's charging near those places for folks? And there was something else you said, and I was gonna, and now I just lost the thought.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah,
okay.
maybe it'll come back to me.
No, this has been so helpful, and I totally agree. It's great to hear that they're thinking about those things, and you're talking about this paradigm shift.
Oh, the cars for clunkers. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Great. Yeah.
It's a great idea, and actually, I facilitated a technical advisory committee for the Minnesota Department of Transportation and the Met Council. GPI, Great Plains, was tasked with doing a couple of electric vehicle plans and assessments for them, and so the timeline was similar, and so we got them to agree to have a shared technical advisory committee because there was a lot of overlap. And that suggestion, some kind of, as we were trying to, come up with ideas about how to, get more widespread adoption, things like that were brought up. Like, is there a way, the cash for clunker kind of thing? So who knows, maybe that idea will come back. And it's about money. And so, we'll see. But I do think that if there's anything that you all can do when you talk to people, is try to get people to be thinking about the total cost of ownership for a vehicle. Because I think that is the frame that makes a total, change for people when they all of a sudden go, oh yeah, that's right. Operating it, that costs money, right? So Anna.
Yeah. So, Diana, I appreciated hearing your experience with your two EVs and as an early adopter and all of that. And I'd love to hear from some of the other folks on this call too about their experiences as an EV owner, and where'd you go, and like where do you go? How far are you comfortable going? All of that. And then also, I do live in a multifamily house, so if anybody else has experience with EVs in a multifamily environment, I'd love to hear how you charge. But if not, I just want to hear your experiences.
Go ahead, Chuck.
For what it's worth, I live in, I would call it very rural Minnesota, small town near Fergus Falls, Dalton, and I have made I bought my Kia EV6 2.5 years ago, April of 22. I've made 3 round trips to Arizona with it, and a number of trips to Chicago, Lake Michigan, where my sister has a place, and back and forth.
What's the range?
Range, well, full charge, 100% is around 270.
Yeah, that's a nice.
And it's if I can find a high-powered station, which Electrify America is trying to move toward, if I can get a 250 kW station, I can charge from 10% to 80% in 18 minutes.
Wow.
A lot of them are at Walmarts, and it's
Yep.
hardly time to walk in and use the restroom and come back, and it's ready to go. So I've had no problems. I will admit I'm an 85-year-old, and you probably won't see too many other 85-year-olds doing this sort of thing, but I'm very comfortable with it, and would not go back to a gas car, internal combustion engine for
Mhm.
anything.
Can I ask you a question, Chuck?
Sure.
So you live in a small town near Fergus Falls. What do other people, do you get questions? Like, do people like, I'm curious about that, small town experience and what that means. Do they assume you're a Democrat? Like, tell me what's life like in a small town,
I-
driving an EV?
It's you're discouraging me now. I don't get a lot of questions, and I go to a very progressive Unitarian church while I'm here in the summer, and I'm probably no, I think I'm the only EV driver in the whole group. I keep pushing it. I call myself an evangelist for EVs, and so I'm more than willing to talk about it and share my experiences and push for it. But the point earlier about cost, the other factor is environmental. I mean, the climate
Mhm.
certainly has got to be in the foremost of our minds. I heard a very interesting gentleman at a climate meeting at the library in Fergus last week, Paul Jensen, I believe his name is, from Fargo Moorhead area. Very astute on climate issues. And when he had a chart, it was called En-ROAD, I believe, and they have a very a complex calculation worked out where you can put in all of different factors and see what it does for carbon reduction. And when I mentioned driving an EV, he said, well, if your electricity is coming from a coal plant, yeah, you're not putting out exhaust emissions, but it's not doing that much. Well, that's the push toward renewable energy by our power plants, and it's got to happen, and it's got to happen soon. All you have to do is look at Florida right now. Get me started. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. I'm going to put my email in here. I would love to connect with you just because we're trying to do some more work in Greater Minnesota, and having, somebody that has an experience driving, and, I love the, going to Arizona, that's huge.
Mhm.
People just don't think that you can,
Uh,
drive that far. So
I've
cool.
not had any problems whatsoever.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thanks, Chuck. Susan? If you're, okay, there you
I
go.
got it. Yeah, I bought an ID4 in it's a Volkswagen in 23, and before we got it, I put in a charger in our garage, a level 2, and so we have basically just been charging it at home. But then when the weather gets better, we go up north, and so we put a charger in up there. We did find 2 chargers in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. One is at the Chevy dealer, and we haven't used that one, but the other one is a public charger that will only give you just a certain amount of charge, and we could not figure it out, how to get more charge out of it. So that was one problem, just because we were thinking, if we were desperate, that wouldn't even get us to the cabin.
Mhm.
And the other thing, we found another one in Mora, and it was at a grocery store, and it wouldn't work. And so I called the company, and they said they would get back to me, and they
Mhm.
never did.
Mhm.
So we were just charging there because we wanted to test it out, and it wasn't a good test. So
Yeah, I mean, that has been one of the challenges. Consistently, when I've looked at, polling, one of the biggest barriers, or one of the biggest barriers for people who don't own, and biggest complaints for people that do own, is downtime of, even more so than not chargers. Because if you think there's a charger, so then you take a trip and you get there and it doesn't work, it's bad news. If you know there's no charger, you'll adjust your plan based on that, right? So getting to a charger that doesn't work, and it's happened to me, and back in the day when there was one charger between here and Duluth. And if that Pine City one was down, I couldn't get there. So, yeah, that's a big issue. Thanks. Hi, Bill. Don't you have a question or comment? You're on mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say kudos to Chuck for being an evangelist and self-declaring there. That's good, Chuck, because I think the other thing that I think about is I drive this Volt. I mentioned that earlier, a Chevy Volt, and I don't think many people know that it's even a plug-in hybrid, So I just stuck, because I'm not driving it to save the world. I'm driving it so other people see me drive it, so that they will think about it. I'm not sure people would look at your EV6, which, by the way, I covet an EV6. It's a beautiful vehicle. But I bet a lot of people don't even know it's electric. And so I would suggest that we all evangelize, so to speak, through, I'm not a bumper sticker guy ordinarily, but I stuck a green one on the left rear bumper so that when people pass me, they see me jabbing them a little bit to say, go electric, And so I think that's part of this too, is just to educate everybody else. And I'll admit too, that I've got a son who drives a pickup, so I'm working on him too. I'm trying to evangelize in that direction.
Good job.
Could I add, my license plate says DCAC.
Oh, very good.
It says what?
DC space AC.
That's funny.
It's the new black and white license plate. Stands out pretty good.
That's good. Kind of sounds rock and roll too,
I know, I tried to get AC/DC, but that was long taken.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thanks, Bill. Jen.
Hi. So let's see. I have a Leaf, or I had a Leaf. It was a 2015, like 7 years ago. That was my first EV, and then in the last year, I got a Hyundai Kona, and my husband got an ID4, and so we have two EVs, and so I think we are eligible to get have filed for both of them, so that's pretty good. One of them, anyway, mine was, I think it was considered used, although mine was part of like the California, it's like a lemon, because it was part of the recall where the like there was fire erupting from the batteries, so that was bad. And but it got like a fully new battery replacement as part of the recall, and I bought it afterwards. Anyway, so that's kind of my story. We love driving our EVs. We've been doing it exclusively now for about 7 years. So, mostly no problems. And certainly like with the ranges that we have on these vehicles now, like that's not a hindrance at all. However, and I wanted to echo also the time saving. Like, I can't say how grateful I am to not run out of gas, like on my way to pick up my kids or something like that. And like, oh, right, that's 10 minutes stopping at a gas station that I didn't factor in, just not a factor anymore. I love that. But one challenge that I don't remember it happening with the Leaf when that was our only car. But like how we handled when the Leaf, like, the battery died or whatever. But this past winter, my battery died, and we learned that you cannot jump one EV with another EV. And then also like the Kona, you know, I mean, whatever, it's great for a lot of reasons. It's obviously, you know, a lemon, like technically. So maybe it's not perfect, but, and there are like some weird design things where like, I don't know, when the batteries run out, like the auxiliary battery is run out because I left the lights on or whatever, you can't charge the main battery. And I don't know, just some weirdness, like because you can't open the battery like cover thing or something. There's just some weird like design kind of things. But so my question is about what people recommend for like backup for like when the battery, the auxiliary battery dies. Like, do you just have AAA? Like, you know, do you have like a charger at home and somehow you got to get your car home? I don't know. What do you recommend?
I'll just say that that has never happened to me. So, I don't have a solution, but is the auxiliary battery, like a regular, I don't remember, I've never looked at mine. Is it a regular like 12, like, is it a regular battery?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
For the
Then why wouldn't you just have, I mean, you
12
could
volt.
buy another one or something, or have,
You
I don't
can-
know.
You can buy little jump packs that are no bigger than
Mm.
with 2 cables on them that you can jump your battery with. It's very easy to carry in your trunk or wherever. Costco or any auto store.
So jumping it with a regular battery?
Yeah, the 12-volt auxiliary battery, yeah. Not
And
not the main high voltage battery.
right, but what would you what would you jump it with?
These little packets come with 2 cables that you just clip onto your 12-volt battery.
And it's got something in it, in the
It's just a
device that
battery.
charges it.
It's a little
It's a
lithium
battery.
pack. It's a lithium battery pack is
Got
what
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use AAA and love AAA, so that's something else altogether, but
yeah.
And this, it happened to me once in my first first generation vehicle that I actually ran out of battery driving. I think we were trying to I think we were kind of testing it a little bit. So I wasn't very far from home, but I had to have a flatbed truck. They can't like just tell you they had to have a flatbed truck. And I was like, okay, that was a little more expensive. So I'm not testing that anymore.
Okay, we're approaching 7:30, about a minute from now. I know that Diana would like to get to the Lynx game.
I would.
But we'll keep it going for another 5-10 minutes. Anyone that wants to talk, Diana, you're welcome to do whatever works for you. So,
All right. Bill, did you have another question or?
no, I think I'm good right now. I'll probably come up with one after you're gone, after you've taken off, but thanks so much.
Well, yeah, and I put my email in the chat. Feel free to email me. Tim knows how to get a hold of me.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all the work that you guys do. Appreciate you. And let me just say, go Lynx.
Yes. Yes.
thanks, Diana.
Thanks, Diane.